بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope everyone is well and in the best of health and iman. Welcome to another episode of the Journey to the Quran. Our first episode, alhamdulillah, with Qari Ashikur Rahman went amazing, hence why we're doing another one. And we've got an amazing list in the next couple of days with great ulama and Qaris. We were meant to have today Hafiz Abu Sayyid, but due to a family member being unwell, he couldn't make it. But alhamdulillah, we got a great replacement. And this person, alhamdulillah, I've met him. I got to know him as a friend in Darul Uloom. We studied together. He is the head of the hifz department in the Masjid Taqwa, and he is Shaykh Muhammad Desai. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, man?
Assalamu wa rahmatullah. Hafsab, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. Thanks for filling in last minute, man. Appreciate it.
Jazakallah khair to you guys for giving me the opportunity to do this, especially in this month of Ramadan and especially during this moment in time where everything is a bit tight and lockdown. So it's nice to be part of something like this. So Jazakallah khair to you guys for giving me the opportunity.
How's your Ramadan going?
Alhamdulillah, it's steady away. Not as hard as I expected it to be, given the circumstances. But alhamdulillah, I kept myself busy. And here up north in Bradford, where we're from, things are coming back into normality. So alhamdulillah, we're not tied down too much.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, we're gonna go straight into it with the first question, Sheikh. So, brothers and sisters, if you do have any comments you want to ask Sheikh, please do write them in the chat, and inshallah throughout the program I will ask Sheikh, and inshallah he will try his best to answer them. Okay, Sheikh, the first question I have is, what interested you or motivated you to become Hafiz?
Going back some years now, subhanallah, going back some many years, I think as a child, it was something that kind of was instilled in me as a child. You see, when I was growing up, it was just part of, being the eldest and being the first child. My parents, whenever we used to go anywhere and things, we'd always have Quran recitation on in the Quran. And I really took a liking to, our shuyukh from abroad that recite. And as a very small child, I would, sometimes sit there and imitate them. And obviously the regular, that in those days, there were cassettes. So we used to listen to on a cassettes, the Imams of the Haramain and things. And from there, I learned a lot of the surahs as a child off by heart, just, without even looking at the Quran or anything like. And I think from there, it was one of those where, because I'd learned certain things from the Quran already, and then my father, may Allah give him a long life, he always encouraged me to attend with him into these, Quran gatherings, Quran programs, be it local, be it, nationally. And we used to go, and I was always inspired by the Huffaz and especially the Quran reciters. I think I was very inspired by these guys to kind of pursue my road into hifz.
Mashallah, that's very good. So was it your own idea, or did your dad have an influence as well?
I think dad had a very large part to play subliminally. As a child, I would have never understood that. As a child, I would have just seen it as, cassettes playing and Quran recitations, etc. But now, given the years that have gone by, and I look back at it now, I feel that, what, he did it with a lot of wisdom. He didn't force me into it, but he kind of put stones there for me to walk on and kind of just guide me into it. So that once my first, may Allah give him a long life, like I said, my first ustad of hifz was my father. So he kind of grounded me and gave me a good foundation. I only did the last 2 juz with him, but that was a stepping stone. And then from after that, it was, the fact that constantly I was in and around those circles where they kind of remind you the value that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds in regards to a person who memorizes his book. And I think no matter what, I think that even, the many years, fast forward, over the years when I was becoming Hafiz, all the obstacles that I faced. I know we can maybe talk about this later, but many of the obstacles, that was one of the main things that managed to keep me intact. Was the back on my head, there was always the value of being a hafiz, and the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows his mercy and blessings and bestows them on a person of such nature. So yeah, I think that's what kind of kept me going.
MashaAllah. So may Allah grant your dad a long, long life, Shaykh.
Ameen. Ameen.
Allah. Because obviously I say this to everyone, the madrasa starts at home. It's not when you go
Yeah,
in madrasa and then you start behaving and start
yeah.
living. It starts from your own house.
From home. Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. I remember I started learning the Arabic, the letters and the rest of it. My mother taught me that. That wasn't really my father's department. But then, but like I said, my father, mashallah, he used to have his Quran recitations on the car and the rest of it. And so from a very early age, I started my hifz journey at the age of 6.
MashaAllah.
Slowly, in my first year, I think I'd only got through like maybe half a juz. But then coming to my second year, at the age of 7, dad pushed me a little bit more. So I got through the rest of Juz Amma and Juz Tabarak, I got through with him. And then towards the end of that academic year, he kind of took me off his shoulders and put me into a madrasa, a local madrasa. He put me in. And my first hifz ustad, Maulana Amir, who's a graduate from Markaz, Dewsbury, I got through my first 1.25 juz from the beginning with him. So in that second year of hifz, I'd only done 3.25 juz by then. But that was now the foundation done.
Alhamdulillah. And the second question I have, obviously we both met each other in Darul Uloom,
Yeah.
studied together. We had some funny moments, crazy moments. It was good, alhamdulillah. But I want to ask, why did you choose Darul Uloom? Out of all the boarding schools in the UK, why Darul Uloom?
Wow. Okay, that's a good question. Why Darul Uloom? Initially, I had, in all honesty, and this is me being having a locker room conversation. I had no intention of going to Darul Uloom.
Yeah.
That's the honest truth. I had no intention. I was in a local school here. I wasn't the best of children, let's just say. So it was just one of those days where I had a bad day at school, and I was still doing my madrasa here, so I became hafid here, everything alongside. But it was one of those. I was actually, yeah. So I'd finished my hifz locally, and then I was doing my door, and in that year in school, I think I'd started playing up, and I think it was just I was having a bad week that led to a bad month, and then Dad said, "That's it, take your pick. Where you going? Because we're not having you. You need to really." But my father, like I said, Allah grant him a long life. He was an orphan at a very young age, and he was from a very, very young age. He was part of the early batch in Darul Uloom. So I guess he understood why he wanted me to go into a boarding school, into a madrasa, just to instill those kind of values that wouldn't be instilled locally, if that makes sense. So he gave me the options of where you wanted to go. So there was a few options on the table with regards to Darul Uloom Leicester. There was Darul Uloom Karachi on there as well. Believe it or not, it was that even came up in conversation afterwards as well, to go Binori Town. I think in my end of my first year of Alim class, that was in the pipework again, to go Binori Town in Pakistan. But like I said, he gave me options, and the reason why I took the Lumburi on board was because, as like I said, my father had a very close connection with Darul Uloom, and so I felt that would be more my comfort zone than any of the other madarises, because I know that he'll know certain of the teachers there, and certain things. It's not one of those where he's gonna have to go into a madrasa and break an ice with the teachers. A lot of the teachers there would be his classmates from many years before. And so that's what encouraged me to go to Darul Uloom.
Yeah, no, your dad's amazing, because you're from Bradford, aren't you?
I'm from Bradford. I'm hoping a lot of people understand me.
They're with each other. What's like from Bradford to Bury? How long does it actually take? So
Oh, we were down the road. You could get 40 minutes on average.
exactly. So you could have the option to go home after class, but you actually opted to stay in the madrasa.
I opted to stay in the madrasa purposely because I think it was more feasible that way.
Mm.
Come in and go in. Practicality wise, it wasn't very practical. But I used to speaking about that. I used to come home every weekend. So I don't know if you remember every Saturday after class,
Mm.
I used to be on the straight one way out, and then I used to before Mutala time on Sunday, I was back in again.
Alhamdulillah.
So it was. I was only there occasionally. I'd spend the weekend there, but most I think for the 5 years I spent in Darul Uloom, I wasn't. I most of the weekends I came home.
Mm. Did you enjoy Darul Uloom?
I think I speak on behalf of yourself as well as a lot of the Darul Uloom Talaba and the students, graduates, everyone on board. To be honest, from the beginning of time till now, I'd say that every Darul Uloom student has their own unique journey.
Of course.
Um, I think personally, I had a very unique journey of my own, as you probably remember as well. I was fortunate enough to do the khidmat of a lot of my teachers that were there.
Mm.
Um, I was fortunate enough to sit in the company of a lot of, in their locker room discussions. I was fortunate enough, and I think it was, and I still, I give full credit to, firstly, Allah Almighty. Secondly, to my parents and all the ustads that I've had from day dot in Bradford right through till my recent, graduation of my alim class. All the ustads, I think, due to their du'as, I am where I am. I literally, sometimes I think about it, especially where I live and the kind of things that I face, on a day-to-day basis. I don't think if it wasn't for any of the du'as of any of them guys, I wouldn't be where I am. No chance.
Alhamdulillah.
So
No.
Darul Buri did play a very, till now it still does. You know what? To be very honest, till now I see your ustad more than you probably
Yeah.
see him. I see him at least once a month, if not once every second month.
MashaAllah.
Still in touch with him over the phone. Still talk to him. He still comes to Bradford. I'll still go to Bolton to see him. So Alhamdulillah, you know what? It's the journey still lives. I'll never say that my Darul journey ever finished. It
Mm.
might have quietened down, but due to staying in touch with those studs, I think it's still there.
Alhamdulillah. We had amazing ustads at Darul Uloom, didn't we? Amazing ustad. I mean, the
Yeah,
name.
I was part of the unfortunate batch who never had him, your ustad, as my teacher, but I had the under 16 version of him.
Yeah.
Hafiz Ibrahim Sab, may Allah, grant him a long life. He's right now ill and he's got dementia. So he's not fully there mentally anymore. But this was what your ustad told me. Your ustad, yeah, Hafiz Ali Sab, Hafizullah, he gave me his address, my ustad's address, and he said, go to visit him. He's
Mm.
unwell. But again, like I said, the ustads that we had in Darul Uloom, some of them, wow, Muanur Haq Sab, Hafiz Ali Sab, all the way down to our Tajweed ustad, Hafiz Yusuf, um, mashallah, the ustads that we had there. I honestly, and I think, you know what, they talk about the golden years in the 1990s, the early 1990s. They talk about a lot of the golden years then. And I honestly believe that, especially because like I finished from Darul Uloom well, I didn't finish, but I left from Darul Uloom end of 2013. But to my understanding, it was mid 2014 that a lot of things changed in Darul Uloom.
Mm.
So I got to see the last of the last of the originals, if that makes sense, because it was that in 2014 Mullah Umar Jisab rahimahullah passed away. So yeah, it was I enjoyed my journey, to say the least. To say the least, I did.
Alhamdulillah. No, it's really important that we keep in touch with our ustads. It's really important.
No, 100%. I totally agree.
Alhamdulillah.
I
Next
can, I
question.
can go on forever with regards to Darul, so I think I'm going to leave it there for now.
Alhamdulillah. And also may Allah preserve our Shaykh, Hazrat Yusuf Mutala Sab. I mean, you can't mention Darul Uloom and his name doesn't pop up. Honestly, he is just
No, and
a legend. A
I had
legend.
my time. I had some stories with Hazrat as well, and
Yeah.
I think I have one regret with Hazrat, and is now I talk about it, um because it was a regret, and it was just one of those occasions where I really wanted to, and I was really praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time that I really wanted to speak to Hazrat with a couple of personal issues I was having at the time in Darul Uloom.
Mm.
I must have been about 16 at the time, and I remember just but I was always scared. Hazrat had that, he had that robe, and he had that persona about him that I was always scared. My dad always, go see him, go see, and dad, I'll shake his hand, but and I was told to go give him something elsewhere in Darul. I had to go fix a laptop or something. Mona Nazir Haji in the office, and I had to go see Hazrat and in the bungalow, and I knocked on the door, and at that time Suleiman was very young. I think he's finished now. Mona Suleiman, he was very young at that time, and I think Qasim was younger as well, the other son. So one of them opened the door, and rather than asking for Hazrat, I just gave the laptop and I said, "Just tell your dad this." And I went back and I didn't think nothing of it till the afternoon, and it dawned on me that, wait a second, that was my chance to sit with Hazrat
Mm.
and talk to him. And wallahi, that time never came again. I never had that opportunity again to sit with Hazrat. So I cry on that, when Hazrat Rahimullah passed away.
Yeah. It was tough.
Um,
Tough news.
I I I I remember fighting with my dad verbally, not in a bad way, but it was, who's flying out? Is it dad flying out, or is it me flying out? And well, without, he didn't tell me he wanted to fly out, and I didn't tell him I wanted to fly out. And I was in Dars at that time. It was a Friday evening, and I was looking at tickets and to fly out on the Saturday. And on the Saturday we had a bit of a family gathering, so I decided that I'll wait till then. And it just so happened that at the family gathering, my dad went and booked his tickets, and I was like, I should have just booked them. But I said, you know what, Dad, you were always closer to him, and Hazrat, like I said, every Darul Uloom student had their own unique journey with Hazrat, and my dad had a very unique journey. And so in all respect to my father, I said, Dad, you go, and I'll look after everybody else here. So yeah, Darul Uloom was something else.
Alhamdulillah. That's really good. I think about Sheikh Hassan Mawlana Yusuf Mutala Sahab. Like, as soon as he walks in the masjid, he goes dead silent. Everyone stands up. It's like they just look at him.
But I'll tell you, so I know a lot of students never used to see it, especially those students that were never close to him as such. I wouldn't consider myself to be close to him either, but I noticed it. The love that Hazrat had for his Darul Uloom students.
Mm.
I think I'd be wrong to say that he wasn't a father figure to each and every one of us. If, okay, he might have distanced himself a little bit to look after his own family affairs, but I strongly believe that if anyone was to ever knock on his door and say, just talk to Hazrat, we're a Darul Uloom student, he would give you time of the day. He would sit with you and he would talk. And I noticed this on the couple of occasions I had the chance to sit with him. It wasn't one-on-one, unfortunately, but it was in the presence of some of our other sheikhs. At that time, Pir Sahab, Hazrat Talha Sahab, rahimahullah, was alive. It was sometimes in his company, sometimes in Mullah Hashim Sahab, Hafizullah's company. So it was there or thereabouts. But Hazrat really had a special love and affection to his, and you can see it eminently. I look at it across the board. Those students that graduated or were part of Darul Uloom, compare it to other students of other madrasas, you can tell that, these guys are Hazrat's batch.
Of course.
They're like the way you can tell the Markaz batch, the Tablighi, but they're the Hafiz Patel's batch. These guys are Hazrat's batch. You can tell straight away. So Hazrat really had his tawajjuh on a lot of his students, if all of his students, so to speak.
Mm. I mean, all these great speakers and sheikhs you see today is because of him. You've got names,
100%.
big names like Sheikh Riyad al-Haq, an amazing sheikh. Then you got
Yeah,
Sheikh Zahir Mahmood, another one. Sheikh
yeah,
Ahmed Ali,
yeah.
Mawlana Abdurrahim al-Mubarak Sahab.
You name it, you can read the whole register out. They're all pioneers in their own field. All, a lot of them, they're all pioneers from the top right to the bottom. They've all, mashallah, they've all, Hazrat's efforts have really shown,
Alhamdulillah.
and we're blessed to say the
Alhamdulillah.
least.
Okay, Sheikh, I'm going to move on. We can talk about Hazard all day, to be honest, but
Yeah, let's move on, inshallah.
move on, inshallah. Okay, the next question is, how long did it take you to complete the hifz course?
My journey, my hifz journey was hit and miss, to be fair. But I think, give or take, I had a, so I started, like I said, first year I'd only got through half a juz. Second year I'd done up to three. I'd done 3 and a quarter.
Mm.
The following year after that, I think I got up to 5. Then after that, I took a break for a year. Um, then after that, I came back in and I got up to, I think I did another 5. And then I did for the year after that, I did another 6. So I think all in all, if I go to calculate, I think my actual hifz years was about 5 to 6 years. That's without obviously the door years that I had in between, and after, obviously. But yeah, the actual hifz years, it was a lengthy journey. But like I said, I wasn't the best of students. I wasn't the best of children. So I didn't make an easy journey on my ustads either. But Allah reward them the highest of Jannahs. They put up, if they, and I say it to everybody, Alhamdulillah, I teach hifz and I'm the head of the hifz department in Masjid Taqwa in Bradford. And I say to some of these students, I say, you guys are gems compared to what I was. Like, if I had another version of me, I would have, I don't know, I would have probably got rid of him by now. So I'd never want a duplicate of me when I was a student, no chance, because I know what I got up to. And I didn't make it easy. Definitely, I did not make it an easy journey for any of my ustads. But yeah, I really thank all the ustads that really put up with me. I had many ustads as well, so to speak. Many ustads I had, and they all had their different ways of teaching, methods of teaching, ways about going things. So I had many different ustads, but alhamdulillah, we are where we are today.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, through them.
So how did you motivate yourself? Because you said 5 6 years. That is quite a long time. Alhamdulillah, you finished it, but
Me,
you
it brings me back to what I said earlier on. It was due to the value of, you see, from as a child, like I said, my father's massive, massive play, part and parcel of all of this. It was always a goal of mine in my head. We all have goals and aspirations of what we want to do when we grow up, and that, a lot of it is based on your childhood circumstances and your kind of circles that you're around when you're a child. So if you're in a family that's always been business orientated, then there's a good chance that you're going to be a businessman when you grow up. If you're a guy that's been, in a family of law, you're going to go down that line. And if you're in a generic family, then you're going to be a general kind. So alhamdulillah, my father, due to the tarbiyah that he did, I had a goal in my head that I've always wanted to do my hifz, and I've always wanted to teach hifz. They were just two things. And I said to myself, I said, regardless of what happens, whatever I come across in life, I'm not really, alim class, bonus, university, bonus, whatever, bonus. My hifz and becoming a hifz will start. Personally, for me, that was my, you can speak to my brothers on a different occasion, inshallah. They might have different aspirations and goals. But for me, that was me. Mine was just hifz. That was it. It was nothing else.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, it's good, man. Because one thing I would say is anyone that takes on a hifz course,
Mhm.
one thing that you don't do is don't compare yourself to others.
No,
That's
100%.
yeah. Because there's no difference if you finish in 3 or 4 or 5 years. You're both still hafiz. There's no difference.
I think everyone has their own unique journey. Even when I deliver some of the teacher trainings I have to deliver with regards to the hifz department, one thing I always say, we've just had, and I'm basically, I had this, just worked in time. I'm training somebody else up at the moment, in our madrasa with regards to hifz, and I was mentioning to him, I said, you know, one thing is you have to put yourself into the child's brain. What are they expecting? How old are they? And what are they expecting from an ustad? Firstly. Secondly, you also have to look at their mental capacity and how they process. Some students are faster than others, some are slower than others. Some will be faster than you, some will be slower than you. But as a teacher, it's a responsibility you have. It's an amanat you have. It's an amanat from him up there, but it's a responsibility also, not just for the knowledge that you have, but from the parents that put the children in front of you, that you have to make it work. And so what I say to all my students, and especially their parents, is hifz is not an easy journey. No, nothing good comes without sacrifice. So hifz is not going to be an easy journey. But my responsibility as an ustad who's teaching and looking after your children for 3 hours a day is to make the journey as enjoyable as possible. That's key for me. That is very key for me. I think, if I make it enjoyable for the student, then you're gonna. I say, you're gonna have a bad day. You'll have a bad week. God forbid, but you might even have a bad month. But it's the teacher's responsibility to see it through, because if it was a parent's responsibility, then they would have never put the child in front of you. The parent has put the child in front of the hifz ustad in the madrasa for a reason, to hand that responsibility over. Now it's the teacher's responsibility to keep the kid going. And so for me, it's all about making. I'll have days when I'm teaching as well. I'll have days where I won't teach. It may be something like, for example, a parents come in and complain, for example, I'm having a bad day with my kid. I'll say, you know what, guys, close your Qur'ans today. Let's talk. And it won't even be anything specific. It's just a general chit chat with the kids. And the class that I've currently got at the moment, well, we've got quite a few classes, but the one that I'm heading at the moment, the eldest is 16. He's Hafiz, alhamdulillah, now. And he's actually doing Taraweehs with me this year. So he's 16. He's the eldest in the batch, and outside of madrasa and outside of school, he does boxing. And then I've got the youngest in my class who's 9. And so the kind of unit that I've built in the class is the eldest is the eldest brother to the youngest. And yes, I am going to expect the youngest to be mischievous, and he's going to mess about. But that's children. But you have to make it enjoyable. So for me, it's making them learn. I'll put pressure on them, but with limitations. I won't pressure them too much. And if it means I need to give them a day break in between where we just chit and chat, or, even if it means, you have to be an inspiration to these kids, especially in this time and day. Like we said, Hazrat and our main pioneers, one by one, they're returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we don't create people with muhabbat for the Quran, we're losing our ummah day by day. We can see it evidently, but it's our responsibility. And I strongly believe that if we don't make the class enjoyable for the children, then come tomorrow, they're not going to have nothing to relate to or nothing to fall back to. So yeah, that's I think that's what more now. Like I said, I know we've kind of got off the question, but now that I've gone past my hifz stage and the rest of it, and now that I'm a teacher, I think this is where I stand with running a hifz class and how I would change things. Maybe my time was a bit different, where we never had that relationship with our ustads at that time because they were elders and so forth. But we can make a difference. 100%. I strongly believe we can make a very strong difference.
Jazakallah khair for that beautiful answer, Shaykh. I'll move on to the next question. What was your daily routine like?
Daily routine was very simple. Dad was very strict, let's just say. So if we're going to talk about pre-Darul Uloom years, Dad was very strict, Mum was very strict. They were the good old days of the other ways of disciplining. There was other ways of disciplining. So after Fajr was a must. After Fajr, 100% was a must. And evening time was a must. The only difference was that during the afternoon, so after school, my mother always had a routine with me. And you know something, I don't know how this has worked, but I'm in habit of it till today. Till today. I have to have a midday nap.
Of course.
But my mom, so my mom was, and now I understand why mom did it. it was due to because you're in school, and I wasn't about, in terms of education, alhamdulillah, I did well in school. I used to put my head down. So your brain energy dries out. You have a midday nap after school. She'd make sure we were asleep for a good hour. You flat out, you're sleeping. You'd get up, go over your sabak para, whatever it may be, 10, 15 minutes, and you're in class. But the good thing was by the days that I wouldn't sleep, I would sleep in class.
Okay.
Because mentally I'm already drained. Hifz isn't, like I said, hifz, it takes a lot of mental energy. It does. Because it's a whole new subject, and you're not only reading, but you're internalizing, you're learning things by memory, and it's not an easy task. So even now when I talk to my students, I advise a lot of their parents to midday nap. But that was my simple routine.
Alhamdulillah.
Morning, evening, and midday nap.
Hifz is not easy, but not everything is easy in life, is it? You have to
Mhm.
work and you enjoy the fruits of labours after. Once you,
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, Sheikh, for the brothers and sisters who are watching, if they do decide to take on a hifz course or decide to put their children in a hifz course, like what techniques would you advise them? Like how to learn, how to memorize? What was your way of learning the Quran?
My way of learning the Quran was unique again, just like every hifz student is. And I think my advice to parents, I'd I'd give them so I tell them how I did it, obviously, because that was what worked best for me, right? So I'd share my experience. Um, but with regards to advising the parents, somebody that wanted to put their child into hifz, the first thing I'd say is make sure you're on a level playing ground with the teacher. That's the first thing. You have to be willing to cooperate for the next 4 to 5 years, give or take, with the teacher. Regular communication. Make sure you're on the same kind of understanding. Make sure there's good reasoning behind why the teacher is doing what he's doing, why the parent is doing what they're doing at home. Make sure there's a good level of communication, understanding between the pair. That's first thing. Second thing is, like I mentioned, making sure that I get it. Making sure the parent also understands that even at home, try to make it enjoyable for the child to learn. Um, in this day and age, incentives work. Incentives work massive. We have an incentive system in our madrasa at the moment where, like with my class personally, if any of my children hit their targets, I I I won't necessarily take them out for a munch, but I'll give them some money. I'll give them a hadiyah, £10 hadiyah. Now, when I've mentioned it to other ustads, they're like, "Whoa, £10 hadiyah, you're giving, if you've got 13 kids you're teaching and they're doing a month a para, a juz, you're giving 130. You know what? You're rewarding the kids. They they're looking forward to it. Okay, fair dues. You can't put a price on somebody that's become hafiz. You can't. And yeah, in the long run, over the 30 juz, you'd have given 300 quid out. But it worked. And children, it's incentives. It comes down to incentives. It really does.
Mm.
And especially when some kids don't make it, some kids do hit their targets, it pushes others. It really does. So I think incentives, I'd also mention to the parents to have incentives at home,
Mm.
but also have a very strict timetable at home,
Yeah.
and to make sure that they're also cooperating. Very few have I come across those kind of parents where they've left the kid to it and the kid's actually done it. Actually done it, like, wow. But then majority, I have to work in tag team. It has to be a tag team from both sides.
Mm. Well, that's why I would recommend boarding school for any parents out there if you do decide to.
Boarding school, I'd recommend if you want to totally give them the full, because in boarding school you have your mutala, you have your fajr mutala, you have your afternoon time to sit. You've got no excuse. You
Mm.
have no excuse.
Exactly.
But for those children, for those parents that feasibility and practicality, they can't send them to boarding school, but you really want your child to do hifz, my
Mm.
my honest advice would be, might cost you a little bit to go the extra mile and find a good madrasa with good ustads, with somebody on the same kind of playing field that you know is not teaching the kids for the dollar, basically. They're teaching kids because they want they want the future Huffaz to stand strong. They've made their own mistakes and that's my key advice to parents.
Another question I have, Sheikh, is would you have done anything differently? Like, looking back at your journey, would you have done anything different?
My own hifz journey.
Yeah, your own his journey.
Yeah, I should have behaved a lot more. I should have behaved a lot more. I should have behaved a lot more. I should have cooperated a lot more. Like I said, I wasn't the best of students.
Hmm.
And I think in a very humble way, I think my teachers would agree if I had them on live right now, they'd probably they won't even sit there and eat from the home and say no, he was a good. They would genuinely turn around and say no, he was a bad student. But it was like I said, through the tawajjuh of Hazrat and through the du'as of my parents and the teachers' du'as, alhamdulillah, I pulled through. So would I do things differently? I would have done my learning methods. I would have kept the same. My routine, I would have kept the same. Personally, I should have personally changed a lot of my habits and my way about going with things. I had a temper. So if things didn't go my way, I'd throw a tantrum. I would. I'd throw a tantrum. And I don't. That was me. If I didn't want to learn, I am not learning. And there were times where I wanted to get out, and I'm sick of it. It's not working. It's not going my way. Why is it not going my way? For it should be my way or the highway. I was naive. I was young at the time. I was naive at the time, and like I said, I was a very stubborn, temperamental child. And but my teachers stuck it out with me. They never ever bent backwards or ever gave in to any of my stubbornness or my temper. I even remember in Darul Uloom when I was doing Dora, I had a bad phase there at one point, and I even went to one of the Rahim Sahib and complained. And I said, one of the Rahim Sahib, I said, I need out of that class. I said, I need another class. I need out. And he said, no, you're staying in that class. And he knew why. He knew why. He knew that was the only ustad that could control me. So he said, you're not going nowhere else. You're staying there.
Hmm.
And alhamdulillah, I stuck it through. And you know what? I am where I am. Alhamdulillah. I couldn't be in a better place.
Alhamdulillah. But how was it in boarding school? Like, I know you went home on the weekends, but how was it not seeing family and friends? How did you cope?
I think I'm going to reverse that question on you. How did
Okay,
you cope?
okay, go on then.
How did you cope? I
Me?
was easy. I come home every weekend, got to see the friends, and all it was Darul Uloom was a different family and friends circle to me. But for somebody like yourself who let go from London,
Yeah.
I'm going to reverse the question on you.
No, actually, it was hard. First 2 weeks was hard because I was 17 when I came to Darwin Berry. Obviously,
Mm.
I've lived with my family for 16 years, and just to go off to a boarding school and never see them for a long time, it was hard. It was hard, but alhamdulillah, I had good friends, good roommates. Alhamdulillah, I had Mufti Sadruddin's nephews as my roommates. You remember them?
Yeah. The
My
Shah brothers.
brothers, exactly. Alhamdulillah, had a great
Yeah,
ustad.
yeah, you guys had a good set. I think for me, like I said, I settled in straight away. I
Hmm.
did. I remember I settled in straight away purely because I never really had much of an option anyway. So I was kind of like, I need to settle in whether I liked it or not.
Hmm.
Um, that was one. Two was I was 13 at the time when I went into Darul Uloom. So I wasn't. I think I would have found it a lot harder if I was 16, your age, 17 when you went in, because by that time you've matured a little bit more and you've got a bit more of a social circle and the rest of it to let go of all that. As a 13-year-old, you can let go, you're letting go of things every day. So it doesn't, so that's why I don't think it fazed me too much settling into Darul Uloom. And to know that I was back home on Friday anyway, it was like, oh, I'm coming home on Friday. So
Hmm.
it's just like going out in Jamaat for 5 days and you're back home again. So, and you're talking, alhamdulillah, you could talk to your parents every single day. And I think in Darul Uloom we had a couple of people that I already knew from Bradford, and I had my cousins and stuff that were from Blackburn and other areas that were also there. So it was a second home to me before I knew it.
Alhamdulillah. Shaykh, I'm going to ask two more questions and we'll wrap it up.
Inshallah.
What does your routine consist of now? I mean, alhamdulillah, you're Hafiz now, you're also an alim, so obviously you have to revise both. So how do you balance between the both, between your Quran and your books? So what is your routine consist of now?
My routine, as in lockdown routine on general routine.
General routine.
Yeah, because a lot lockdown routine is a bit of a weird one at the moment, so I wouldn't go too much into that. But my actual routine, generally, I actually have 3 jobs. Alhamdulillah, I'm married as well. So I have quite a bit on my plate. But my routine, generally, most of it consists around the Quran. With regards to the kitabs and the books, um, it comes into play when I've got a program to deliver. So if I've got Juma Bayan, we're in a rota right now where monthly I'm also a khatib where I have to deliver lectures. So when it comes to something like that, then yeah, the kitabs come out. Um, we're starting some other classes and stuff for elders and stuff like that around the local area. So again, that's when the kitabs will come out. But generally around the book side of things, normal day to day, they're not really in my day to day. Most of the time it's just my Quran, and even my Quran is usually around the hifz class time. So I usually go to the madrasa about 20 minutes before my actual class starts. So I'm in the office, I'm dealing with other students because, like I said, I'm alongside being the head of hifz in the madrasa, I'm the child protection officer and all the rest of it. So I've also got other side things to also deal with, etc. as well.
Alhamdulillah. Have you got any advice for parents out there if they do want to send their child to hifz course?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, just make sure you've got a good level of understanding with the teachers that are on the receiving end. Um, and not only that, but to also make sure that you have a good understanding with your children. And main thing is to, children. No, with regards to, like I said, just making sure that. But another thing that I really advise parents on is to make sure that the children, from a very young age, they're also the parents are also instilling in the children the value of the Quran, not forcing it.
Of course.
Making sure that the child wants to do it. One of the things that I do, especially when taking on new applications in the madrasa, is I always request to have a one-on-one, especially with the hifz department. I'll have a one-on-one with the student to come where the parent is not there. Not to hide conversation, but to have a general conversation. Because I have come across certain students where they feel they're getting forced into hifz and they don't want to do it. Now, if the child doesn't want to do it, all we can do is encourage them to do it by sharing the values of hifz. But we can never force them. If we force them, they're not going to do it. And it's dead energy on both sides. They're wasting your time, energy, and money, and you're wasting their time, energy, and money, and there's no result. So one thing I always do is I always sit with the children first and talk to them, ask them how they're. Just be normal, be very casual, very very informal with the children. How's your day? How's your home routine like? What's your Quran routine like? Would you like to do hifz? Why would you? You ask the children, why would you like to do hifz? Forget your dad. And I say, forget your parents. I said, why do you want to do it? I said, I can tell your parents now you don't want to do it. So why do you want to? And then they'll come out with their reasoning. They will come out with, Ustaji, we've always wanted to do it. Or, my big brothers are Hafiz and I wanted to follow, or my fathers are Hafiz. They'll come out with some sort of an excuse. So when that obviously happens, that's when you figure out that, and once the child has got an idea in his head that he wants to do it, they're self-motivated. You just have to make your job as a parent and as a teacher is to just make sure that fire stays ignited. Don't kill it. Regardless of a rainy day, regardless of a rainy week, you make sure that flame never comes out. That flame's always there right till the end.
Alhamdulillah. I think that's a beautiful way to end this episode, Shaykh.
Alhamdulillah. We hope it's been beneficial for everybody.
All right. Thank you for filling in last minute, though. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, it's been a pleasure. Jazakallah for giving us the opportunity to do this during this period of time when things like this are not so available. So alhamdulillah.
Brothers and sisters, we've got a few announcements before we do wrap things up. On Sunday, we have an event by Sheikh Afdal Faraz. I'm sure most of you did join last week. If you haven't, there was a session last week and that is available on YouTube if you do want to watch it. This Sunday, 3 to 4 p.m., how to make the most out of your du'as by Sheikh Afdal Faraz. And also on Saturday, we have episode 3 of the Journey to the Quran series, and we have an amazing guest, Qari Adil Yusuf. So inshallah, I hope you guys can join and benefit more from that Qari as well. I want to say Jazakallah khair to the brothers and sisters who watched this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Jazakallah khair to Shaykh Muhammad Desai for filling in last minute and joining us. I know he's a very busy man. Alhamdulillah, gave us time. To keep up to date with our events, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. And I'm going to request Sheikh to close the program with a quick dua. I want to say Jazakallah khair to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh, can you do a quick dua?
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen, Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم لك الحمد ولك الشكر اللهم إني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك اللهم اغفر لي ذنبي واسع لي في داري وبارك لي في رزقي اللهم اكفني بحلالك عن حرامك وأغنى بفضلك عمن سواك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.